So tell me, Renee said, leaning back in her chair with that perfect little smirk she wore like perfume, doesn't it get exhausting, depending on your son for everything? The words fell like ice water across the table. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard her. But no, she meant every syllable. My hand, resting on the table, tightened slightly around my fork. Erin froze mid-bite. Sophie's head snapped toward her mother, her lips parting in horror. And I smiled. That kind of smile that looks polite but isn't. The kind you learn to wear after life has taught you restraint is the sharpest blade of all. Exhausting? I said lightly. No, dear, I find peace in what others might find impossible. The air between us shimmered with discomfort. Even the waiter, hovering nearby, seemed unsure whether to refill glasses or flee the scene entirely. What Renee didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the woman she was pitying was more than she portrayed, that perhaps she was reading her all wrong. And the truth is, I had no intention of correcting her. Because this wasn't just a dinner. This was a test. My test.
Hi, my loves. Welcome back to Real Hope Diaries, where real stories meet the kind of lessons life doesn't teach gently. Before we dive deeper into this story, I just want to take a moment to thank every single one of you who's been here, liking, commenting, and sharing. Your support isn't just numbers, it's light. And tonight, I want to save this prayer for you. May your quiet strength be recognized by the right hearts. May your worth never be buried beneath someone else's blindness. And may every insult you endure become a seed for your victory. All right, now let me tell you how I ended up pretending to be poor and what happened when pride tried to eat at Grace.
3 weeks before that dinner, Aaron had come home with a smile that reached all the way to his eyes. He had that glow, the kind men get when they've found something that feels like home. "Mom," he said, "Sophie's family wants to meet you. They're planning a dinner at Bella's Bistro next Friday." He was so excited, and I was happy for him, truly. But when I asked what her parents were like, a strange hesitation flickered across his face. "They're traditional," he said slowly. "You know, old money, small town status. They can be a little particular." "Particular?" I repeated, half smiling. "Mom, they care a lot about appearances." Appearances. That one word stayed with me for days, because I knew what it was like to be judged by one. When my husband passed away, people pitied me. When I started rebuilding my life, people doubted me. And when I finally succeeded, those same people whispered that I'd changed. You learn a lot about human nature when you walk through grief and rebuild alone. I'd learned that people rarely see you. They see what you can do for them. So I made a choice. I'd meet Sophie's parents exactly as they imagined me to be. A simple, struggling widow with a humble smile. No designer clothes, no flashy car, just me. And the quiet truth they couldn't possibly recognize. Bella's Bistro sat at the edge of town, warm lights glowing through rain-flecked windows, jazz murmuring softly in the background. I parked my old Honda between two glossy SUVs and took a deep breath. The rain had just stopped, leaving the pavement slick like black glass. Inside, the air smelled of rosemary and baked bread. There, by the window, I saw them, Renee and Charles Monroe, looking every bit the picture of suburban royalty. Renee's pearls glowed faintly beneath the chandelier. Her lipstick was a deliberate shade of authority, crimson confidence. Charles sat with one arm draped behind his chair, checking his watch as if punctuality were proof of virtue. And between them, sweet, nervous Sophie. When she saw me, her face lit up. She stood immediately, pulling Aaron up beside her. "Mom, you made it!" "Of course," I said, hugging her warmly. "I wouldn't miss meeting my new family." Renee rose, extending her hand, palm cool, grip delicate but deliberate. "So lovely to finally meet you, Mrs. Hopper." "Please," I said, "just Margaret." Charles nodded with that polite stiffness that hides condescension under civility. The waiter came, menus rustled, orders were placed, and as we began to eat, the performance began. Renee spoke the most, every word polished like silver, every laugh rehearsed. "Sophie's always been drawn to ambitious people," she said, glancing at her daughter with exaggerated fondness. "It's in her nature, you know, coming from a family like ours." "Of course," I replied smoothly, "and Erin's been drawn to kindness." Her eyes flickered at that, just for a second. It was subtle, a small tightening of the jaw, a forced smile, but I caught it. Pride never hides well when confronted with sincerity. Sophie tried to shift the conversation, bless her heart, but Renee was a conductor, and everyone at that table played her tune. "She tells us you're retired," she said, cutting her steak neatly. "Partially," I said. "I still manage a few things." "Oh," she said, feigning interest. "What kind of things?" "Housing, helping people find homes." She nodded slowly, her lips curving in what she must have thought was a kind smile. But it wasn't kindness, it was pity, dressed in pearls. And I sat there watching her, wondering what she'd think if she knew the last 3 families I'd helped were corporate relocations worth 6 figures each. But I didn't say that. I didn't need to. Because this wasn't about proving my worth. It was about observing hers. By the time dessert arrived, her mask had begun to slip. Pride has poor stamina. It tires quickly when left unchallenged. "You must get lonely," she said at one point. "Living alone, I mean. I can't imagine managing bills and errands by myself at your age." I smiled gently. "Loneliness isn't about who's in your house. It's about who's in your heart." Her fork paused mid-air. Aaron's lips twitched with the faintest grin. For a moment, silence pressed against the table, thick, uneasy. Then Charles cleared his throat, trying to change the subject. But Renee wasn't done. "Sophie's father and I have been saving for her wedding since she was little. It's important that it reflects our family's standards." Naturally, a wedding should reflect both families' values. She blinked, as though unsure whether that was agreement or challenge. Maybe it was both. If you've ever had to sit through a conversation where someone tried to belittle you while you stayed calm on the outside, but burned inside, hit that like button, because what comes next will show you exactly how calm strength wins in the end. As we walked out after dinner, Sophie pulled me aside. Her eyes were glassy with tears. "I'm so sorry, Margaret," she whispered. "Mom doesn't mean—" "Sweetheart," I said softly, touching her cheek, "don't apologize for other people's blindness. They'll see when the light's ready." Aaron walked us to the cars, silent, ashamed. "He'll talk to her," he said. "No," I replied. "Let her talk to herself." He looked confused, but I only smiled, because the truth was, I didn't need to defend myself. People who underestimate you build their own downfall, one assumption at a time. On the drive home, the rain began again, gentle at first, then steady, then pounding against the windshield. Each drop echoed like a memory. I thought of all the times I'd been dismissed, overlooked, mistaken for less than I was. I thought of the clients who'd underestimated me until I handed them the keys to a dream home. I thought of the nights I'd worked alone in my office, lights burning past midnight, trying to prove to myself that I could build something from nothing. And as lightning cracked across the sky, I whispered to the empty car, "You can strip me of titles, money, or recognition, but you'll never take my peace." A week later, I received an email that made me smile. It was from the Harper Foundation, the organization I'd founded 15 years ago in honor of my late husband. "We're excited to announce the annual gala. Please confirm your attendance, Margaret. As always, your presence inspires us." I hadn't planned on attending this year, but then I remembered what Renee had said at dinner, that only the most established families attended that event. And suddenly, it felt right. Not as revenge, not even as proof, but as revelation. Because sometimes the most powerful lesson isn't spoken, it's seen. Would you have done what I did? Stayed silent and let time reveal the truth? Or would you have confronted them that night? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to know your heart on this one. "They thought they knew who I was," I said quietly. "But what they saw was a shadow. The light was coming, and it was about to blind them all." "Mom, are you sure about this?" Aaron asked as I fastened the clasp on my navy blue dress. I turned toward him, catching his reflection in the mirror. His brow was furrowed, his tie slightly askew. He looked like a boy again. My boy. "About the gala," I said. "Yeah," he muttered. "You don't have to prove anything to them." "Oh, sweetheart," I said softly. "This isn't about proving anything. It's about presence. Sometimes silence teaches louder than pride ever could." He hesitated. "You're not mad at Sophie's mom, are you?" "Mad," I chuckled lightly. "No, just curious to see what kind of woman hides behind that confidence." He nodded slowly, still unsure, still protective. "She's going to be there, you know." "I know. That's why I'm going." The Harper Foundation Gala wasn't an ordinary event. Every year, it brought together the city's most influential business owners, philanthropists, and social figures, all dressed to impress beneath the glitter of chandeliers and champagne glow. This year, I chose not to make a grand entrance. I simply arrived, quietly, gracefully. And when I stepped through those glass doors, the hum of conversation dipped just slightly, like a soft intake of breath. It wasn't because of me, it was because people remembered me. Some whispered my name, others nodded respectfully. A few came forward, old friends, business partners, people who knew me long before success became public. And there, across the room, in a gown that shimmered like silver envy, stood Renee. "Oh my goodness," she said when she finally noticed me. "You are here." Her voice carried that same mix of surprise and superiority, the kind of tone people use when they're unsure whether to bow or scoff. "I am," I said, smiling. "It's been a while." "You're a member?" she asked, blinking in confusion. I tilted my head. "More like the founder." For a heartbeat, her lips parted. No words came. Her eyes darted toward the banner hanging near the stage. The Harper Foundation, celebrating 15 years of hope. The color drained from her face. You mean your Harper Foundation? Yes, I said simply. My late husband and I started it. Her jaw trembled slightly, the mask cracking. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I just held her gaze until she had to look away.
Have you ever watched someone realize they misjudged you and had to eat their pride quietly? If you have, give this video a thumbs up. Because trust me, that kind of silence speaks louder than any words ever could.
An hour later, dinner was served. Golden light glinting off crystal glasses, soft music floating through the air. Renee sat across the table from me now, her posture stiff, her laughter brittle. But she didn't speak much anymore. She didn't have to. The room did it for her. Mrs. Harper, one of the guests said, raising a glass, we're all grateful for what your foundation's done this year. Those scholarships changed lives. Thank you, I said. It's a team effort, but giving back, that's the true measure of wealth. I could feel Renee shrinking beside me. When the host announced me as the evening's keynote speaker, she flinched. And I walked to the stage, not as the woman she'd pitied, but as the woman she'd never taken time to know. The hall dimmed slightly as the spotlight found me. I looked over the sea of faces, some proud, some curious, some quietly humbled. When I lost my husband, I also lost my identity. For a while, the world treated me like a shadow of what I used to be. People assumed I'd fade quietly into grief, but grief doesn't destroy strength, it refines it. A few heads nodded. I caught Aaron's eyes, shining with pride, and Sophie's, glistening with tears. You see, people often mistake simplicity for weakness, but there's a certain power in being underestimated. It allows you to observe, to understand, and eventually to rise without having to announce it. The room was silent, hanging on every word. To those who measure worth by appearances, be careful. You might overlook the very person sent to teach you humility. Applause erupted. It wasn't loud or wild. It was respectful, the kind that carries weight. And when I stepped down, I passed by Renee. She couldn't meet my eyes. Later that night, as the event wound down, she found me standing near the terrace, city lights flickering below, champagne glass untouched in my hand. "Margaret," she began, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it, "I owe you an apology." "You don't owe me anything," I said gently. "You only owe yourself reflection." "No," she insisted. "I was awful to you. I judged you. I assumed things that weren't true. I'm embarrassed." I looked at her, not with anger, but with a kind of calm compassion that only time and pain can teach. "Renee," I said softly, "you were blinded by pride. We all have been, at some point. But humility isn't about being small. It's about recognizing the truth." She swallowed hard, tears glinting beneath her lashes. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," I whispered. "Just be better. For your daughter, for yourself." She nodded, broken open in a way that wasn't humiliating, just human. As the night ended, Aaron wrapped his arm around me. "Mom," he said, smiling, "that was incredible. You didn't just make them respect you, you taught them something." "I didn't do it for them," I said quietly. "I did it for you, so you'd never feel ashamed of where you come from." Sophie hugged me next, trembling slightly. "You're amazing," she whispered. "I never knew, I knew you were kind, but kindness and strength aren't opposites. They're partners." Renee approached once more before leaving. She reached out her hand. "I hope we can start over," she said softly. "We already have," I replied. And in that moment, something shifted between us, the kind of unspoken understanding that only truth can bring. A few days after the gala, a delivery arrived at my door. A bouquet of white lilies. Renee's handwriting on the note. "Thank you for teaching me with grace instead of pride. R." I smiled, setting the flowers in a vase near the window. Sometimes life doesn't need revenge. Sometimes dignity is the revenge. If you're still watching, I want you to do something. Write one word in the comments: grace. Because sometimes grace changes hearts faster than anger ever could. They thought they were meeting a poor widow, I say in closing, but they met a woman who learned that humility is wealth no one can measure. And when pride tried to shame her, she didn't fight. She simply waited for truth to rise. Fade to soft piano and outro whisper. Because no matter how people see you, the truth of who you are always finds the light. The days after the gala felt quieter, not because life slowed down, but because peace finally had room to breathe again. It's strange, isn't it? How silence, once so heavy with shame, can feel sacred once truth has spoken. I found myself waking early, pouring coffee while the city still slept, standing at the same kitchen window where I'd once doubted everything: my choices, my strength, my worth. But that morning, I smiled, because humility had done what pride never could. It had built bridges instead of walls. One morning, I heard a car door shut outside. When I stepped out onto the porch, Sophie stood there, nervous, hands clasped in front of her, a folded envelope in her grasp. "Good morning, sweetheart," I said, opening the door. "Come in." She hesitated. "Can I talk to you?" We sat at the dining table, sunlight warming the air between us. "I've been meaning to say this. What my mom did that day, it was wrong. I tried to stop her, but you don't owe me an apology, Sophie," I said gently. "I do," she insisted, "because I didn't defend you when I should have. You've shown me what real grace looks like, and I want to be more like you." Her eyes welled up. I reached across the table, taking her hand. "You already are," I whispered. "You saw your mother for who she was, and you didn't follow her example. That takes strength." She exhaled shakily, tears falling now. "I thought wealth made people better, but you've shown me it doesn't. Character does. And now you'll carry that lesson forward, for your marriage, for your children someday." Have you ever forgiven someone not because they deserved it, but because you deserved peace? If so, hit the like button, because forgiveness isn't weakness, it's wisdom in motion. That afternoon, as Sophie left, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Harper?" a voice said. "This is Renee." There was a pause, a trembling one. "I hope you don't mind me calling. I just wanted to talk."
Of course, I said. I'm listening. I wanted to tell you that you've changed me, she said quietly. I've been thinking about everything. The things I said, the way I treated you. I even went to church this week for the first time in years. I realize that pride doesn't make us strong. It isolates us. Her voice broke. I don't know how to undo the damage, but I'd like to try. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of her words settle. You already have, I said softly. Acknowledgement is the first bridge. The rest is built with consistency. Thank you, she whispered. Maybe one day we can share coffee. As friends. I'd like that. Bring Sophie. We'll make it a family table. She laughed, softly, uncertainly. I'd like that too. And for the first time, I heard sincerity in her tone. No performance, no condescension, just honesty. A few months later, Aaron and Sophie invited me to their wedding anniversary dinner. Small, intimate, full of warmth. The house was glowing with candlelight, laughter spilling into the air. Sophie looked radiant, not just because of love, but because she'd found peace within herself. Renee was there too. When I walked in, she stood. Margaret, you look lovely. Thank you, I said, smiling. So do you. And for a moment, something passed between us. A silent agreement to let the past rest. During dinner, Renee lifted her glass. To new beginnings, she said. And to family, I added. Aaron reached for my hand, eyes glistening. Mom, I don't think I've ever told you how proud I am to be your son. You just did, I said with a smile. If this story is touching your heart right now, take a second to comment Grace Wins below. Let's flood this section with reminders that kindness always finds its way home. Later that night, as I helped clear the table, Renee joined me in the kitchen. She stood quietly for a moment, then said, You know, I spent years teaching my daughter to aim high, but I never taught her how to stay humble once she got there. You taught her that. You taught me that. We all learn from pain, I said, but the best lessons come when we let pain become purpose. She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. You're a remarkable woman, Margaret. No, I replied, just a woman who's learned to listen more than speak. For a long moment, we stood side by side, two women who had once been adversaries, now equals, quietly washing dishes like old friends. The sound of laughter drifted in from the other room. Aaron and Sophie playing music, slow dancing in the glow of the living room light. And I thought, maybe this is what redemption looks like. Not dramatic, not loud, just steady, like the heartbeat of forgiveness. Weeks later, I received another letter, handwritten, sealed with gold ink. Margaret, you've inspired me to use my position differently. I've decided to fund a scholarship through your foundation, one for women who've been underestimated or dismissed. Consider it a small way to honor what you've taught me. With respect, Renee Harper. I smiled when I read her signature. She'd taken my last name, not by blood, but by change of heart, the kind of change that doesn't just fix relationships, it transforms souls.
You know, sometimes life hides our blessings in the shape of insults. People will judge, misunderstand, and even look down on you, not realizing you're the very person sent to teach them grace. But that's the beauty of truth. It doesn't need defending. It simply waits for the right moment to shine. That day I hid my worth, I didn't lose anything. I gained the one thing money can't buy: clarity. And in the end, every person who tried to humiliate me became part of my lesson in humility. Because power isn't about what you own. It's about who you become when the world underestimates you. Before you leave, my dear viewers, I want you to do 3 things. Comment, "Truth always rises." Like this video if it touched your heart, and subscribe for more stories from Real Hope Diaries. Stories that remind us all that pain can polish and grace always wins in the end. Sometimes the richest hearts are found in the quietest rooms, and sometimes the humblest people hold the greatest stories.